In the previous videos, I talked how you can manage a dynamic array of objects and how to have dynamic string as objects member. I recommend you to watch previous videos to make yourself comfortable for this content. Here I talk how you can manage dynamic array when its objects have members in the form of dynamic array other than the string or array of characters. I will begin with this code, which is the code that I came up with when I talked the previous video. I recorded previous video where I showed that how to create a dynamic array of objects when each object has a dynamic name or character array stored in dynamic memory. Here I am going to be um, talking about, for example, a student may have a marks, and marks can be, let's say, assume that it could be 55.6 in this format, 63.7, like this. So we want to store marks in a floating point type dynamic array. So we need to have a pointer, and unlike in the case of the character array or string, we need to also keep track of how many elements are there in the dynamic array. The marks will be stored in a dynamic array in this format, and so on. This is going to be a dynamic array. So we also need to keep track of number of marks in the array or size of the array. So let us call this uh, number of marks. Now with this I want to get rid of this name here to simplify the code, and we don't have to make any changes in the memory allocation because this will allocate memory. I mean, in this case it is 4 byte 8 byte plus 8 byte, total 16 byte memory space will be needed for one object. In the data entry case, we don't want to read the name, we read the ID, and we don't need this memory allocation and this name, and also we don't need this variable. What we do need is the number of marks and the marks itself. So I would have another cout statement to ask the user to enter number of marks and read it directly in sptr I dot number of marks variable. Then after that I want to iterate, I want to have a loop j equals to 0. Make sure that you have this variable kind of different than this I. It could be problem sometimes. So j less than I marks. I think it should be, let me make it uppercase letter M, number of marks, and j plus plus. Inside the loop we ask the user to enter marks for a particular course. Let's say course, let me just simplify this, marks marks 1, marks 2, and so in that format, and read it in S. But before that you need to do the memory allocation, because at this point we don't have, this array is just the pointer, this is just a pointer, so you need to allocate memory. So sptr I dot SPTR I dot marks equals to new floating point type. This is a floating point type, and total number is actually stored in this variable. So this will actually create a dynamic array of the floating point type variables or elements, and after that you can read in those elements SPTR I dot and j. So this will actually do the task of reading the user entered marks into the array, the dynamic array. So this is the data entry part, the change you want to make in the data entry part. Just to repeat, these are the things we added, and we also removed some of the things that were actually associated with the name of the student. In the processing part, if you want to just work with ID is fine, but if you want to work with let's say marks, in this case we have a little bit data, marks data, so it would be interesting to let's say to compute the average marks. So we also want to compute the average marks. So for that no, I think I want to do I don't want to complicate this thing. Let me keep it the way it is. I want to have another processing step, process 2, in which I would be actually computing in which I would be receiving a student object only one student object, and I would be returning the average marks, which is double. So in this logic, this function will actually receive I would receive this as a reference, receive student object and return average of the marks for that student. So we need to have a variable to store the average marks. Let me call this average marks, and initialize it to 0 first, and in the loop I less than SPTR dot you want to have number of marks I plus plus, and you want to add the marks to it, A, B, G plus equals to SPTR dot marks I, and finally you want to return the average marks divided by this the size, total number of marks. So I think this should be okay with the I mean this should solve our purpose. Now G allocation is going to be a little bit different. In the place of name we will be deleting marks. So I think this should be okay now. Here the client code in the main function, I also want to call another function marks equals to process 2 and pass, let's say if you want to display average marks of all the student, then you can iterate number of students I plus plus, and in this loop you can compute the average. Let me have a double the variable defined here, and use it inside average marks for student I plus 1 just to display average marks of the student, and finally deallocate function. I think this should be working. Let us compile, execute this in the terminal and see whether there are any issues. Let me go back to the terminal, and compile. There is issue. So there is a semicolon missing in line number 53. I would like to go to the code, line number 53. So we need to put this semicolon here, and back to the terminal. There is also another semicolon missing, line 82. Here. Again to the terminal. I think this function receives argument. Here. Yeah, we need to pass the student object, so that was missing here. SPTR I. Again to the terminal. Yeah, it's working. Let me execute it. Taking a little bit time. So how many students? If I enter 3, 2002 Jackson. I think there is a problem with this. So yeah, I actually entered it incorrectly, because in the previous recording I had a name, so I shouldn't have entered this name, because in this code I didn't have, this is a basic level code, so I didn't have any the code that will prevent from this invalid data entry. So the assumption is that the user will enter the data, correct data, so there is no validation at this point. So in the future videos I will show you how to validate the data. So for this code to work properly, you must enter the valid data. For example, first you enter ID, only ID, not the name, and then after that enter only marks, and then after that you number of marks, and then after you enter the marks. So it was not properly used. Going back to the terminal. So many students are 3, student ID 2002, and number of marks for this student, let me have let's say 5, and marks 1, 44.5, 55.6, 66.7, 17.8, 88.9. And second student 1G01 ID, number of marks 4, marks 1, 66.8, 77.9, 88.0, 99.1. Student 3 5005 ID, 3 marks 77.7, 66, 65, 67.8, 87.4. So now it has done the task. Minimum value ID is computed, and average marks of student 1 60.7, 82 for student 2 82.95, and for student 3 77.63. This is all I have to discuss on this topic. Thank you for watching.